Before I get into this video, I made a video talking about male repression and desire, analyzing Saltburn, the talented Mr. Ripley, and Netflix's Ripley TV series. That video talks a lot about the dangers of repression, especially male repression of desire under patriarchy. But this video, more towards the end, I talk about what's freeing when we let go of repression-based ways of being. So in some ways, this video kind of feels like a part two to that one, even though here I'm talking about challengers. But you can check out that video if you'd like to see how it's in conversation with this one. Moving on. Challengers is one of those films that's really hard to give a synopsis for. I think overall it's a good film, but it's also a vibes film. I'm not sure if people watched the movie for the actual plot. Maybe I'm speaking for myself here. So we can sum up the film as it's about tennis, competition, erotic tension, and certainly a lot of homoerotic tension. Josh O'Connor and Mike Feist were the pioneers of Rat Boy Summer 2024. When we look at Art and Patrick's bond, they're teammates, rivals, lovers of the same woman. Side note, I don't know if Art loves Tashi, at least not in the I love you as a wife/romantic partner kind of way, but I'll get into that later. But yes, Art and Patrick supposedly love the same woman. Art and Patrick's connection is shaped and in many ways distorted by the covert rules of masculinity. Yes, I know, I'm tired of using the buzzwords too. But seriously, the reason I say that is because their closeness is built through shared rituals of male dominance, training, verbal jabs, the competition of physical endurance. Their relationship is characterized by a lot of physical closeness, which adds to the homoerotic tension, obviously, but going back to my point that their connection is shaped by rules of masculinity, their physical closeness mainly exists within the context of competition. Even when we look at the churro scene, yeah, it's homoerotic, but what makes it quote-unquote not gay is the fact that their closeness is in response to naming their shared interest in the same woman. It's a standoff, so their proximity is acceptable. Also, both Art and Patrick are white, so rules regarding masculinity aren't the same when compared to the masculinity script many men of color are expected to adopt. I won't expand on that in this video, but it is important to mention because while there's a lot of homoeroticisms between Patrick and Art, the reception of how their dynamic plays out is different because they're white. I mean, the attention they get from their dynamic, both on and off screen, is laced with a level of intrigue and admiration. And if you think Patrick and Art being white doesn't matter regarding how their homoerotic dynamic is received, let's do a thought experiment. Let's say we had the same movie. Zendaya still as the female lead, but we had two male black leads. For shits and giggles, let's say Kenan Lonsdale and Jeremy Pope. Do we really honestly think that this movie, with a full black cast, with these two men having a homoerotic dynamic, would be received in the same way? Do we think that it would get the same hype as the challengers we know now? I'm winning. That's all I'll say about that. So much of the tension in Challengers is about whether these two men, or more so Art, can survive the knowledge of how much they want to be close to each other without the whole structure of their masculine self-concept collapsing. Again, I think this is more so a problem for Art, but internalized queerphobia runs deep, so including Patrick too. Plenty of male friendships are based on comradeship, especially in competitive male spaces like elite sports and military units. Robert Strikwerda and Larry May co-authored the article Male Friendship and Intimacy, which explores the nature of intimacy in adult American male friendships. And while they were looking at American male friendships, I do think that this could be applied to male friendships globally. They talk about comradeship being a loyalty born out of shared activity and mutual dependence, but not necessarily deep intimacy. So you can fight alongside someone, celebrate with them, even rely on them in moments of danger, but you're not expected to know them or let them truly know you. Art and Patrick's bond remains mostly in the comradeship zone. They train together, win and lose together, they share routines. But what happens when the bond stops being just about shared activity and starts to take on the charge of personal attachment? That's where repression kicks in. Repression here isn't just not talking about it, it's reorganizing your entire behavior so you never have to confront what you feel. It's what Strikwerda and May describe as the male tendency to avoid mutual self-disclosure, to keep friendships operating in the parallel play lane so you never risk vulnerability. For Art, this means any part of his closeness with Patrick that might be read as romantic or sexual has to be buried, and that burial takes work. It requires constant vigilance, the joking, the deflections, the fixation on women, or a specific woman that your friend also likes, as proof of straightness. Tashi becomes part of that project, someone he desires, maybe, but also someone who can anchor him in heterosexuality. Patrick is freer, more emotionally expressive, seems more comfortable with the idea of not being straight. I mean, we saw that Tinder swipe. That makes him dangerous to Art, because he's a threat to Art's self-concept. Men are often socialized to treat emotional expressiveness as suspect, even dangerous, especially when paired with physical closeness. I don't think Art can name his own pull toward Patrick without breaking the safe rules of male friendship, so he lets Patrick carry the weight of queerness in their dynamic. In this sense, I'm thinking of queerness beyond just romantic and sexual orientation and more generally someone who becomes other. But Patrick becomes the flirt, the boundary crosser, the one who complicates things. On the part of Art, this projection as self-protection acts as a way to frame Patrick as the one crossing the line, but then frame himself as the one holding it. But as we see, Art is a boundary crosser too. He kind of worms his way into Tashi's life, gets into her head, and ultimately uses an opportunity when she's really vulnerable to drive a wedge between Patrick and Tashi, while they're still dating. The real trap isn't just Art's fear of what Patrick represents. It's the shared unspoken agreement to never name what's going on. Tashi knows there's something charged between them. Patrick knows. Even Art knows. Tashi is one of the few people that alludes to it. I think there's a point where Patrick may try to bring it up too, but Art is not receptive to those conversations at all. Strikwerda and May point out that in male friendships, silence around vulnerability often functions as a kind of social contract, a way to keep relationships stable by not threatening them with too much truth. Here, that silence keeps Art locked in a specific kind of closet, not one defined purely by sexual identity, but by the refusal to admit to any form of male intimacy that can't be neutralized by competition or heterosexuality. When it comes to these homoerotic dynamics between men in fiction, I get the fun in speculating whether the characters are really queer or not. I do it too. Plus, we know that at the very least, Patrick is portrayed as a bisexual man in the film. We don't know about Art, but I suspect he's bisexual too. I just don't think he loves Tashi in the I want to be a romantic partner kind of way, and I definitely think the real love of his life is Patrick. I also think this could all be solved if they just became a throuple. Tashi and Patrick would probably be on board anyway. But I think the speculation around the queerness of these fictional male characters bears a much sadder truth. Patriarchy seems to collapse male closeness into either dominance or sex. Male comradeship can be characterized by competitiveness. Men can be romantically and sexually involved with each other with a lot of disapproval, of course, and if they're willing to wear the label that comes with it. But men can't just be deeply and tenderly invested in each other for no other reason than they just like spending time with each other without it being suspect. I think this is true even in queer male circles, where friendship can get tangled up with attraction in ways that make it hard to sustain platonic bonds. I think part of the reason is a lot of gay men use the guise of friendship just to be in proximity to men who they want to have sex with. But Lord Jesus in heaven, that is a whole other conversation. But my point is, the cultural script for men leaves little room for nuanced affection. If you want closeness, it's assumed you must also want possession, which is read as gay. Or, you must find a way to achieve that closeness while continuing to prove and reinforce your straightness. That's part of why Art sabotages himself with Patrick. The minute his feelings start looking less like rivalry and more like care, he has nowhere to put them. There's no safe category for, I want to be near you and I just want to know you because I'm invested in knowing you. Strikwerda and May describe how many men are socialized into emotional callousness. It doesn't just refer to a lack of expression, but a real diminishment of feeling. If every innate impulse and intimate impulse has to be policed, redirected, or joked away, eventually you lose the muscle for naming it at all. I think you also just lose the muscle of being able to empathize with other people's point of view. This is the tragedy of Art. Whether he's gay, straight, or bi is less important, although fun to theorize about. The tragedy is he doesn't know if he's allowed to feel what he feels. So he roots it through competition, through Tashi, through silence, and in doing so he cuts himself off from real opportunities for intimacy. The irony is that naming a desire, even privately, even without acting on it, can be liberating. It breaks the internal loop of self-distortion. You stop mislabeling your feelings, you stop contorting your actions to avoid them. You can choose what to do with them instead of letting them quietly run your life. In male friendships, that might mean being able to say, I admire you, or I want to spend time with you, or even let's get coffee. Do straight men go out for coffee with each other? Like, literally, just to go and like have a chat? That's a genuine question because I don't know if that's a thing. But it would be nice if male friendships could be categorized by more opportunities for vulnerability without scrambling to be in competition with one another or perform straightness. Moving away from this repressed way of being opens a lot of room for emotional honesty and clarity, even if nothing changes externally. Repression encourages lying to yourself, but if you remove that pattern, you can restore self-trust. You're no longer gaslighting yourself about what's true. Moving away from repression reduces projection and misdirected energy. Unacknowledged desires can manifest as jealousy, control, or resentment. Owning them lets you channel that energy more consciously, even if the desire remains unfulfilled. Opening up yourself to emotional honesty leaves space for healthier choices. Knowing and acknowledging the truth allows you to decide how to live with it. Setting boundaries, finding alternate expressions, or simply appreciating it as part of your inner life without letting it dictate your actions. In Challengers, Art and people like him keep confusing desires that make them uncomfortable with identity collapse. When something is hidden even from you, it can feel destabilizing. Once named, it becomes just a truth among other truths, part of you, but not the entirety of who you are. When I think about how I arrived at my own queerness, I realize that being gay is literally the least interesting thing about me. In the same way that being straight is usually the least interesting thing about so many people. It's not to say that our sexual and romantic orientations don't affect how we navigate our world. It can impact who we choose to be in community with, the media we consume, how we relate to others. But before I accepted that I was gay, I spent so much time kind of behaving like Art. Not trying to sabotage my friends' relationships, but like Art, I worked very hard to portray outwardly someone who was composed, disciplined, and deeply invested in reaching the highest standards of my world, which at the time were school and church. But inwardly, I was conflicted and emotionally stunted in ways I didn't fully understand. I mean, I was also younger, but for the longest time, and I still struggle with this now, like Art, I couldn't let myself want what I want without fear. Who would have thought I'd gather all this from Challengers? But I do think that the film teaches us the real victory is being able to say, this is what I feel, this is what I want, and knowing that you don't have to destroy yourself or someone else to keep it hidden.